Hey guys, Captain Dylan Hubbard here at Hubbard's Marina, and it's time for that live stream show. Hopefully, you're ready for a good show. Hopefully, you're ready for a great night. Welcome to the Hubbard's Marina live stream show. Thanks for joining us and hanging out and having a good time with us tonight as we talk about fishing inshore, nearshore, and offshore. We give you fishing tips and tricks. We give away $1,500 in free stuff, and we answer your questions live during the show. So if you want your question answered live, text us at the phone number at the bottom of the screen. You can watch on Facebook, you can watch on YouTube, on Trovo, on Twitch, on Instagram even, and soon TikTok as well. But for now, any of those platforms, you can watch us live. Remember, in order to be eligible to win free trips, you do have to comment once on the Hubbard's Marina Facebook stream. We're streaming to 1,000 different Facebook pages right now, but you do have to go to Hubbard's Marina on Facebook, find the live video, comment one time, make sure you like the video, share the video for us. You're entered to win. Then watch live. You can watch on YouTube and any of the other platforms, Trovo, Twitch, Instagram. You can watch wherever you're most comfortable, but you have to comment at least one time to be eligible to win. And then watch live, because if you're picked as one of those lucky winners, you got 5 minutes or less to claim your free trip by texting us your full home address to the phone number at the bottom of the screen. So at random times throughout the video, we'll let you know we're going to give away a 5-hour half day for 2, a 10-hour all day for 2, a 39-hour trip for 1, and a Hubbard's Marina swag pack. So when we announce those random drawings, you'll see your name come up if you're the lucky winner. We'll announce your name if you're the lucky winner. Then you'll text us at that phone number within 5 minutes to prove you're watching live. That's how the giveaway works. That's how you win free stuff. So stay tuned, watch live, and you got a chance to win. Make sure you comment, like, and share. That will help us out as well. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on TikTok, like our Trovo and Twitch pages as well. We're also on LinkedIn, Pinterest, and a bunch of other social media. Snapchat, don't forget Snapchat. So all those different social media pages as well. So check that out. Want to give a shout out to our friends over there at Gator Jim's Tackle, 3301 Pinellas Point Drive South in St. Pete. If you haven't stopped by Gator Jim's Tackle, make sure you do so. Tell them your friends at Hubbard's Marina sent you. And they have free gifts for the young angler in your life. If you stop by with a young angler and mention Hubbard's Marina, there is a free gift for the young angler as well. Then finally, want to make sure we give a shout out to our supporters who make the show possible as well. Those in our supporters group. If you're not in the supporters group, you can join when you're ready. It's a great way to get a little bit more behind the scenes info, a little bit more connectivity, and you get to have access to that private supporters group and our after show as well. So check out the supporters page. And then finally, want to make sure we give a shout out to all those send-in stars. We had a lot of star senders already tonight. Stars are away on Facebook to help fuel the show and make more of what we do possible. Big shout out to Stephen Batchelor with 500 stars, Todd Stutzman with 250, Keith White, what's up, buddy? Richard Blazak, Larry White with a big 500 stars, appreciate you, man. Ryan Kelly, Jasmine Marie as well. Thank you all so much for the stars so far tonight, and all those in the past who always are sending stars too. We appreciate you guys. Now, we want to make sure also we get right into the photos and show you guys what we're catching, what we're seeing out there on the water, and then we'll get into the weather, then we'll get into your questions. So it goes photos, weather, then what we're catching. So that's how we roll on the show. So first things first, let's show you those photos, and we'll start inshore, show you what we're catching inshore right now, which right now we're seeing a lot of these redfish around. The redfish bite's going well. Definitely more towards the residential dock lines is where we're seeing a lot of those redfish, but you can find them around the oyster bars and grass flats as well. They're looking for those sun-drenched and wind-protected shorelines for sure. They're looking for a little reprieve from that cold weather. Sheep's head, the sheep's head bite is hot right now around structures, docks, piers, bridges, jetties. We're seeing a lot of those sheep's head around. The snook, if you can find them in the back bay areas, They're tucked back in the creeks, rivers, bayous, on those mangrove shorelines. We're finding a lot of those snook. You can tell from the color of this snook how far back in the upper bay and back bay areas it's hanging out, and almost in that brackish water. That's why it's so dark and got such a dark back. And you can tell how far back in the back country these guys are for the same thing. Trout action is going really well on those edges in those shallow areas, even in some of those potholes and kind of channel cuts. You can find a lot of those trout in and out of our local bay area for sure. So definitely, I would say the sheep's head bite is the hot inshore bite, followed by trout, followed by redfish. Then you've got the snook down there at the bottom for sure. But you got to go back and find the snook in the back protected bay area. Sam Lang, appreciate those 490 stars, my friend. Happy New Year. And a big 1,000 stars from Nick Nieves. Appreciate you, Nick. And Lee Willis, appreciate you as well, my friend. So we showed you the inshore photos. Now we're going to show you the nearshore and offshore photos and what we're catching out a little bit deeper. Seeing a lot of them hogfish. The hogfish bite's going really well. We're seeing a lot of hogfish out there. It's all a matter of finding that weather window that allows us to get out to those hogfish has been the challenge. But when we do get out there, we're seeing a lot of them on our 5-hour half day, the 10-hour all day, finding a lot of those hogfish, and then these big old lane snapper mixed in. Fat red grouper, but weather has been treacherous. We got out there on the 1st and caught some nice red grouper on the Flying Hub 2. Caught 26 red grouper on the Flying Hub 2 12-hour extreme trip on the 1st. Captain Joe and Captain Rich crushed them. So hopefully we'll get another weather window to get out there and crush the red grouper out deep. But for now, we're sneaking out there and attacking these hogfish. Tomorrow, Monday, we got an east wind, and we're going to try to sneak out there to our half-day hogfish bottom and stay a little longer and try to milk some of these hogfish on tomorrow's super light load 5-hour half-day trip. It is going to be breezy, a little bumpy, but with that east wind, we should be able to get out there and crush them hogfish. They haven't been able to feed because it's been so bumpy, and tomorrow is going to be our last chance for a few days because Tuesday and Wednesday looks pretty nautical. So hopefully they're going to be ready to chew for sure ahead of that weather. Definitely some nice red grouper from the Flying Hub 2, as you can see there. We are catching a few of them on the 10-hour trip, but not a ton of them. Definitely a little bit more tricky to get some keeper red grouper on the 10-hour. So if you want to catch a lot of keeper red grouper, have a better chance for it, definitely the 12-hour extreme. The long-range trips are going to be your best bet, but you have a chance for them on the 10-hour for sure. But a lot of these guys on the 10-hour all day that are 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 inches, they can get a little bit frustrating. But we are getting some near-shore 20-inchers that do end up being keepers as well. But the big boys, the big fat red grouper that you write home about like this one, they're going to be out deeper on the 12-hour extreme trip for sure. Deeper you go, the bigger and more prolific they are. Plus, we get the occasional scamp grouper as well, which is always a welcomed bonus. Love me some scamp grouper. Real good eating fish. So, we showed you the photos. Now it's time to get into the weather. And hopefully you guys are going to have a lot of questions tonight. Remember, if you have a question you want answered live during the show, text us at the phone number at the bottom of the screen. So, with that, let's get into some of the weather. We're going to go to our hubbardsmarina.com website. We're going to click fishing trips. We're going to hit weather links, and we're going to start off in the 5 to 10 hour forecast area on our wind finder forecast. And you can see from the graph a lot of wind, but you have these little weather windows in between the wind, and that's what you have to capitalize on. So tomorrow you can see it's going to be breezy, but tomorrow's wind is out of the east. It's only about 3 foot out of the east as well. So I think we're going to be able to sneak out there and make it happen in our half-day bottom, 35, 40 foot of water, and go catch some hogfish. They got to be ready to eat because the weather's been so turbulent. They haven't really had a chance to eat. So I'm hoping we're going to do well on the hogfish tomorrow morning on the 5-hour half-day. Tuesday does not look great. I mean, some serious potential for some some serious thunderstorms and some nasty weather. So Tuesday, not so awesome. And then Wednesday, it's going to calm down, but you can see the sea height is 7 foot, over 7 foot at 7 a.m. Wednesday. So going to be pretty darn bumpy Wednesday as it calms down behind that super rough weather that we get Tuesday. Thursday looks pretty nice. Again, an east wind, not too bumpy, around 3 foot. So I would say Monday, tomorrow, and Thursday are going to be your best weather chances in the next 5 to 7 days. Friday doesn't look bad either from a sea height perspective, only about 2.5 foot, but it's going to pick up through the day. So I would say Thursday looks pretty good. Friday might be doable, and we'll be able to get out there near shore, and then the wind will pick up around mid-morning, it looks like, and by the time we're back at that dock on our half-day trip, it's going to start getting rough. But it won't be more than 3 foot until after we're back at the dock. So I think we'll be able to sneak out there half-day fishing Friday, but might even be able to get the 10-hour all-day out Thursday. Definitely the half-day trips. I would say Monday and Thursday are best. Friday might be okay too. And then look at this, another weekend, another cold front. So really, really frustrating weather pattern right now. Strong, strong cold front after strong, strong cold front. And look at that, Tuesday again, another really strong thunderstorm with crazy south winds. So back-to-back Tuesdays with crazy south wind and nasty weather. So the weather report is bleak. So capitalize on those weather windows when you can. Like I said, tomorrow, Monday, Thursday looks like your best chances to get out there and do some catching. And hopefully you'll be able to capitalize on that with us. And potentially there Friday as well. So that's what we're looking at weather-wise. Let's do our first free trip of the night. Let's give away our 5-hour half-day for 2 guests. 5-hour half-day for 2 guests. Lucky winner is Barbara Riggs. Congratulations, Barbara. They are in town right now, so congratulations, Barbara and Robert. That's awesome. We got the 5-hour half-day trip given away. We got the 10-hour all-day for 2, the Hubbard's Marina swag pack still, and that 39-hour trip to give away as well. Want to give a shout-out to Nick Nieves with more stars, another 200 stars. Rick Rogers with a big 1,000 stars. LaShonda with 600. Thank you, LaShonda. James McCullum with 500 stars. Tim McCardle, what's up, buddy? Craig Robinson and Adam Franklin with a big 800 stars as well. Thank you guys so much for the stars, the support on Facebook. We appreciate y'all. Now, we talked a little bit about the fishing, what we're catching now. We talked a little bit about the weather. Now it's time to get into your questions. So do you have a question you want answered live during the show? Drop it in a text message to us at the phone number at the bottom of the screen. We'll answer your question right here live on the show. As we're pulling up those questions, want to make sure we let you guys know that it's red grouper time. Red grouper season started back up. There is no season for red grouper, but red grouper fishing opened back up. Red grouper catching opened back up January 1st. So you're able to harvest those red grouper once again. And we're seeing some nice red grouper out there in about 120 to about 180 foot of water would be a good place to target them. They're deeper this time of year generally. And we catch them really well with around 60-pound leader. About a 7/0 circle hook would be a good starting place. Generally, with those red grouper, you're using a single hook rig with a big piece of dead bait or a big live bait. You can use a double snell rig if you're using a big piece of dead bait. One of my favorite methods is a big squid strip or a big bonita strip, and you put like a 7/0 or even an 8 to 10/0 circle hook if you're using a really big piece of bait, because that hook is going to change sizes with the bait you're using, right? If If you have a bigger chunk of bait, you're going to use a bigger hook because you want to make sure that hook is going to stick out of that chunk of meat. So if you got a big old thick cut of bonita, you're going to need a bigger hook to make sure that barb goes all the way through that piece of meat and the barb is exposed on the other side. So the hook's got to go all the way through it and expose the barb. Then above that hook, maybe an inch, 2 inch, maybe even 3 inches, I put a smaller hook, like a 4/0 or 5/0 hook. And the reason for that is you've got a small hook that goes in the very top of that strip, and then that bigger meat hook can go right in the middle of that strip. So you'll have a nice, maybe 8 to 10 inch piece of bait with a big hook in the middle and a small hook right at the very top. And that ensures you're going to have that big hook to catch that big grouper that swallows that bait. But if you have some of those smaller fish down there pecking at the bait, that smaller hook's going to give you a chance to maybe even catch one of those guys too. So it kind of enables you to make sure you have a hook in the fish and gives you a little bit better of a hookup ratio. But you generally are just going to be fishing a big single hook and letting those smaller fish kind of peck at it, and then you just slowly lift your rod tip up to the sky and then slowly drop it back down. And a lot of times that's going to let those little fish kind of scatter. And once they scatter and move away or just spread out a little bit, it's going to give that big red grouper an opportunity to come in and smash that bait. So you can do that methodology as well, fishing a big piece of dead bait. Or drop down a big live bait, squirrelfish, lizardfish, pinfish, pigfish, all good options for those red grouper as well. Even crabs work well. The calico crabs, the pass crabs, the blue crabs are good red grouper baits occasionally as well. So you never know. First question of the night: how many people can the Hub take on a 10-hour trip? The Hub is running our 10-hour all days right now. So the 10-hour all day is a little different for the month of January and the first 2 weeks of February. Instead of being on our bigger party boat, the 10-hour is on the Hub. So it's kind of like a 10-hour extreme trip because you're on a smaller private charter boat. The 12-hour extreme is like a split charter style trip. It's on our Flying Hub 2. We go really far, really fast, super deep water. But it's an extreme trip because we don't have the air-conditioned cabin. We don't have the galley available. You don't have the amenities of the bigger, larger party boat. And that is the same situation that you're going to face if you do one of these 10-hour trips on the smaller boat, the Hub, during January or the first 2 weeks of February. The Hub, the 10-hour extreme, if you will, is a great opportunity to experience kind of a split charter style trip, but you don't have the air-conditioned cabin, you don't have the galley. You do have a restroom on board, but it is a boat restroom. It's not like the Friendly Fisherman that normally does our 10-hour trips where there's a men and women's head and it's nice and easily accessible by anybody during any time of the trip. The Hub bathroom is a boat restroom. It's towards the bow. It's in the V-berth. You kind of got to climb down in there. Can't really use it while you're moving. Got to wait until you're anchored up and you can kind of talk to the crew and they can help you out. So restroom's a little bit harder to use accessibility wise. You got to be nimble. And then also you don't have the air conditioned cabin. You don't have a galley on board. So that means you don't have any food or drink available. You have to bring all your own food or drink. Bringing it in a bag is a good idea, or bringing it in a cooler and being prepared to maybe allow other people to use your cooler or combine your stuff into a bigger cooler. That way we can reduce the number of coolers on the boat and improve the space on the boat, because we can take up to 18 people on the Hub. We limit it to 14 to increase the quality of the trip and not pack it in too much. But when you're leaving the dock, when you're coming back from the dock, when you're sitting down on the ride out, the ride back, there is kind of limited seating space. Once you start fishing, though, with 14 people, it's not too bad. You do have plenty of room on the boat, but it's not one of those situations where you can spread out and have a bunch of room. 14 people on the Hub it's not cramped, it's not overfilled, but it's definitely a full boat, right? It's a good experience. It's kind of like a 12-hour extreme with 16 people, the same kind of thing. You got plenty of room, but there is a good number of people on the boat. So you want to be cautious of that and make sure you're not bringing a ton of stuff. If you bring 6 rods and a cooler like this and 2 bags, if everybody does that, it's going to be a challenge, and there's not going to be enough room on the boat. So limiting the amount of stuff you bring, consolidating stuff is going to be a really good idea if you're going out there on one of these hub 10-hour trips. But we do have the live bait wells. You do have all the same options. You can bring shrimp. You can bring pinfish. You can bring your own rod and reel. You can rent rod and reels. So all the same things apply. It's just you need to make sure you're prepared with food and drink. That's all. All right, next question. I caught a 14-inch small black grouper inside the Skyway along the channel of Tampa Bay. Are there bigger keeper black grouper in the bay? Potentially in the channel, there might be. Is the likelihood high? Probably not. There's definitely not going to be a ton of keeper black grouper. I would say it might be one, and it might be 22 inches, but it's not going to be a 100-pound black grouper. This true black grouper, what we call a carbo, is a very unique fish. Much more aggressive than gag grouper. Generally get a lot bigger than gag grouper, and there's not a ton of them around. And they don't know much about them. They're a very science-poor fish, meaning they just don't know a lot about the biomass and how they reproduce and all these different things. So it's a big question mark, to be honest with you. But is it common that keeper black grouper are caught? No. What's most common is people catch juvenile gags and think they are black grouper, because a juvenile gag can get really colorful, especially in the bay. If it's up underneath a rock, a lot of people can mistake those juvenile gags for black grouper, and that can be a challenge. All right, let's see. What other questions do we have? What size length top shot do you want to use on 80 to 100-pound braid on a 39-hour trips? So I wouldn't add top shot to 80 or 100-pound because I would be fishing mono. Braid, or when you're fishing bigger reels, you want to go mono. Generally, I wouldn't use 80 or 100-pound braid. I'd be fishing just all mono in my big reel, because fishing for gags, fishing for amberjack, you don't need the sensitivity. They're going to come up and hit that bait, so you don't need to feel the bite, right? So mono is going to be your best bet, and it's going to make sure that they can't shake the hook off. So I like fishing mono for my bigger fish. The only time I fish braid is for my those setups you need more sensitivity, like at my ultralight setup for mangrove snapper and deep water. Then maybe braid might be a little bit helpful. But in today's world, with the fancy reels, the fancy rods, you really don't even need braid. And mono makes it a lot easier because you don't have to worry about doing the top shot. You don't have to worry about doing the line-to-line knot. It just really simplifies your fishing. So I would strongly suggest starting with mono, learning how to do it really well. And once you're kind of an expert level, then you can practice with the braid and get the hang of that. But even then, it creates a lot of challenges on the boat when you're fishing braid and other people are fishing mono, because you're going to get tangled more. So you really need to be ultimate top level expert to fish braid effectively, because not only are you going to potentially get tangled more, not only do you have to do the line to line knot, not only do you have to be more effective staying on top of managing your line, but if you do happen to get tangled, you're going to be screwed. We're going to have to cut your line, and then potentially you're not going to have enough line left in your reel to fish. So it gets really dangerous. So if I'm fishing braid, I'm going to be super conscious of the people around me. And if I see my line drifting somewhere close to where I'm going to be in danger of tangling someone, I'm going to reel up and totally reset to make sure I avoid that tangle. Because I know if I get tangled using braid, my line's going to get cut, and I want to avoid that. So I would fish mono 90% of the time, if at all possible, all the time, especially if you have a nicer rod. You really don't need the braid. But if you're going to fish braid, you do have to use a top shot. On a 10-hour trip, basically the rule of thumb is about 1/3 to 2/3 of your line in the water should be monofilament or fluorocarbon, so top shot. So if you're fishing 100 foot, around 30 feet of mono or fluoro on top of the braid is a good idea. If you're fishing 200 feet on a 39-hour trip, maybe more like 40 or 50 feet of mono or fluorocarbon on top of the braid. So that is kind of your rule of thumb. About 1/3 to 2/3 of your line in the water should be braid, or should be mono or fluorocarbon. Next question. In the middle grounds, are you catching yellowtail on the bottom or on the surface? So what you're thinking about is those videos you see of people fishing in the Keys and those shallow water reefs, and they chum the yellowtail to the surface with a chum bag, and you're catching them with light tackle right on the surface. On our trips, we're catching yellowtail snapper on the bottom. Fishing the same way we fish for mangrove snapper or porgies or vermilions or grouper. Generally, we're catching them on that fish finder rig with a strip of squid or a little strip of bonita or even a live shrimp. You can sometimes get them in our area chummed up to the surface, but that's not the style of fishing we do. We are not going to anchor up and start chumming and try to chum the fish to the surface. That takes a lot of time, and it makes it a little difficult because once they're chummed to the surface, you have to fish in such a manner that you have to kind of fish that school, and it just doesn't work in a party boat style atmosphere. On a private charter, we can do a little bit of that kind of unique style of fishing because our guests are going to be a little bit more flexible, on the timing's a little bit more flexible, and we can fish the way they want. So if they're into that style of fishing, we can do it. On a party boat, no. Generally, we're going to be moving spot to spot to spot, trying to make sure everybody on the boat has the best chance to catch as many fish as possible. So in order to do that, we're constantly moving, and you don't really have a chance to establish a chum line and really get things popping on the surface. Now, there are times, especially on like a 39-hour trip, where the bite's going really, really well. Excuse me. Got a tickle in my throat. And I wanted to make sure I could keep talking. So there's times on 39-hour trips where the bite's going really well, and we might stay at a spot for a while. And if we stay at a spot for a while, a lot of times you can catch these mangrove snapper, these grouper, and when you catch a fish in deeper water, as you start to reel it in, its stomach is going to come out of its mouth. It inverts its stomach because of the gas expansion called barotrauma. So these fish are getting barotrauma as you reel them in really fast, and they're regurgitating what was in their stomach on the way to the surface. So if you're catching a lot of fish in a row, a lot of times you can establish a natural chum line. So if we're fishing a spot for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes 4 or 5 hours, if the bite's going really well, all of a sudden you've established a chum line, and fish will actually start to come up off the bottom towards the surface. So that has happened on 39-hour trips, and a lot of times on one of those spots you can switch to a knocker rig because eventually the bite's going to slow down on the bottom, and that's most of the time because the snapper have come up off the bottom and they're in that chum line. You can switch to a knocker rig with a big chunk of thread fin and destroy a big mangrove snapper, or get a blackfin tuna or a wahoo or a billfish that swam up the chum line. So you never know, but generally no. The yellowtail snapper are going to be caught on the bottom. Next question, what is the best bait for red grouper? So we talked about that a little bit in our last show, and the list was kind of lengthy. We posted the minute-long video to our TikTok channel that goes over the best bait for red grouper. I would say you can use live bait, you can use dead bait, you can use jigs, slow pitch jigs, preferably. I would say octopus jig, the squid Trex jig. I really like those short, fat jigs, the slow pitch jigs. The shorter and fatter ones are going to be a slower, more aggressive flutter, slower fall, and they definitely work really well. As far as dead bait goes, you got squid strips, you got bonita strips. You can double up thread fins. You can use whole squid, octopus. You could use octopus tentacles. Live bait, you can use pinfish, pigfish, squirrelfish, lizardfish. You can even take some of your live bait and butterfly works pretty well as well. So there's a lot of different styles. Publix chicken wings, someone mentioned, works really well too. They got a lot of oil in them, and we talked a lot about that in the last show, so I won't go too much into it. All right. How is the slow pitch uh, taking how's the slow pitch fishing going on the extreme trips? We catch a lot of red grouper using the slow pitch jigs, and we have more experienced anglers who fish the jigs more often, and those who are fishing jigs generally are more experienced anglers who catch quite a few fish with them, even snapper, yellowtails, mangroves, definitely a lot of red grouper too. So I would say the red grouper love the slow pitches for sure. What's the best way to hook a live shrimp when offshore? Same way that you would hook them when you're inshore fishing, at the bottom of the base of the tail and out the top, or across the side of the base of the tail generally is how we're hooking those shrimp. And a lot of times you can even hook two at a time on your hooks, especially for hog fishing. That sometimes works, especially in the summer when we get those smaller shrimp around August, June, July, August. That's when we start doubling up on those smaller shrimp too. Let's see here. It is time to do another giveaway. You're right, Josh. Let's go ahead and do our Hubbard's Marina swag pack and find out who won the Hubbard's Marina swag pack. Remember, you got to give your home address and your t-shirt size if you're picked as the lucky winner here. So let's see who won the swag pack. Rita Ramirez from Denver, Colorado. Congratulations, Rita. Shoot us a message there. Shoot us a text message to the phone number at the bottom of your screen, your full home address and your t-shirt size, and we'll shoot you out the Hubbard's Marina swag pack. Congratulations, Rita. All right, let's see. What other questions do we have here? What's a good spot to catch keeper mutton from shore? I don't know. If you know one, I'd like to know. I would say the best place to catch a keeper mutton from shore would be the Keys. Maybe. You don't get mutton snapper from shore here in Tampa Bay. A lot of people will mistake lane snapper, especially a juvenile lane snapper. They look a lot like a mutton snapper, but we don't get a lot of muttons inshore. And it does happen. I'm not saying it can't happen, but you don't catch a lot of muttons inshore. In Tampa Bay, I can think of like a handful that I've ever seen. Most of the time it's a lane snapper. 9 out of 10 times it's a lane snapper, and people will say, "Oh, it's a mutton," because they look a lot like muttons. Those juvenile lanes don't have those really pronounced yellow lines yet, but the Don's Dock joke is pretty good. You can catch a keeper mutton at our seafood market at the dock there. You can buy one, but yeah, catching one alive from shore, I would say your best bet is going to be the Keys. Really, your only bet. Tony said, "How is dry dock going?" We just got to dry dock there January 4th. Pulled the boat out of the water on the 5th. They've had 2 days of work preparing for Coast Guard inspection, which is tomorrow. And that's going to be the big thing right there. If that Coast Guard inspection goes well, then we're going to have a pretty quick dry dock, and we might even be back a little early. But the Coast Guard is going to be the big question. Coast Guard goes well, we're going good. We're on a good timeline. If Coast Guard doesn't go well, then potentially we're going to be right on time, So that's what we're waiting for. Tomorrow is going to tell the tale how the Coast Guard inspection goes. What was that question? Question to the community. Does the number of comments we post increase our chance of winning a prize? No, it does not. One comment is all you need to enter to win. You can comment as much as you want, but it does not increase your chances. The random name picker software gets all the comments, filters out the duplicate names, and then puts everybody into a bucket and randomly picks a name out of that bucket. That's how the random name generator software works. All right, so can you tell us what's happening with the boat at dry dock? So we pulled it out of the water. The crew went through it, cleaned it up, made sure everything's looking good for the Coast Guard. Everything's pulled out and ready for them. They're going to do their inspection. Once we get through Coast Guard inspection, then we start on our work lists. We want to make sure we have everything up and running and strong for the next 2 years, because we pull those boats out every other year. So the Florida's out of the water this year, next year to be the Friendly. And basically we go through the engines, the generators, all the plumbing, all the wiring, make sure everything's ready to rock and roll. Plus we sand and paint a majority of the vessel as well, and try to finish our work lists of all the things that got run down or beat up or broken during our busy fishing year. So that's kind of what's happening at Dry Dock right now. And we're going to post some photos from our first couple days of Dry Dock in our supporters group here and keep you up to date that way in the supporters group. So stay tuned for that. Let's see here. I am seeing some comments in our YouTube, in our Facebook, in our Trovo, and our Twitch. Just remember, they go really fast, and we can't answer your question if you post it in the comments. If you have a question you want answered live during the show, you have to text us at the phone number on the screen. So if you have a question, make sure you text us that question to this phone number right here. All right. What tackle would you recommend for the 44-hour full moon trip? So remember, our tackle suggestions are going to be pretty hefty on our website. If you go to hubbardsmarina.com and you hit fishing trips and then hit trips, it's going to show you all the different trips. So in this case, if you're looking about a 44-hour trip, you pop over there. It's going to tell you a lot of information right here, kind of the highlights. It's going to have a video talking more about it. Going to have some helpful notes. Then it's going to have a big section on recommended tackle. And then it's going to have a big section on what to bring, meal package options, bait options. It's going to have what you can't bring. It's going to talk more about a bunch of different things. So the website's going to be a really powerful resource for you that you want to take advantage of for sure, and read all about that. Also, the facts page. There's the fishing tips and tricks page. There's the fishing video links page. There's our fishing reports page. So there's just hours and endless days, weeks, months of content there for you to devour as you get excited about your upcoming trip. So definitely a lot of information, the webcams to look at. So I would strongly suggest checking that out. But for a 44-hour trip, for a 39-hour trip, I would recommend similar tackle. Basically, for most of the year, depending on what's open and stuff and what seasons we're going after, generally you're going to have a light, medium, heavy setup, right? So your light setup's like a 40-40, 50-50, meaning 40-pound mainline, 40-pound leader, with like a 6-ounce egg sinker, and fishing like maybe double 5 or 6-aught hooks, double snelled, with cut dead bait for your mangrove snapper. I'm going to fish with that at night, or when the bite's a little slower. Then you're going to have your kind of medium setup for your red grouper, your red snapper, your smaller gag grouper. That's going to be like 60-pound mainline, 60-pound leader, 7-aught circle hook, maybe a 6 or 8-ounce egg sinker, fishing bigger pieces of dead bait or live bait. Then my bigger setup, my 80-80 or my 100-100 or even 125-pound class setup, big reel, big rod, and big hook, fishing big baits with an 8 or 10-ounce egg sinker on that one. So that way I have small, medium, heavy is kind of how I would go into a 44-hour trip. And then making sure, or 39 or 44-hour trip, making sure you have 40, 50, 60, 80, 100, 125-pound fluorocarbon leader options, plenty of swivels, hooks, hooks from 5-aught all the way up to 12-aught, making sure you have plenty of different options there. And then maybe even a slow pitch rod if you're into that kind of thing. Some people get really tied into the trolling. I don't recommend that unless you're an experienced angler that's been out a lot. Then you can kind of experiment with the trolling thing, but you don't need to hop into the trolling thing. It's a bottom fishing trip. We're going bottom fishing. We're focused on bottom fishing. So I would suggest sticking to the bottom fishing for sure. But lots of different options there. It's a long trip. Talk to other people. What I always tell people is those 39 and 44-hour trips, the learning curve is steep. So sometimes people go into it and they try to learn this, learn that, a bunch of questions, and they're trying to bring everything in the kitchen sink, and they're trying to bring their trolling stuff, their slow pitch stuff, their light tackle, their medium tackle, their heavy tackle, this thing, that thing, and all of a sudden you've got all this crap with you. You've packed too much. It's a pain in the butt to get there. It's a pain in the butt to load. It's a pain in the butt to take off the boat. You end up not needing half of it, and you're frustrated. So what I always suggest to people is start small, start slowly, and know going into it that learning curve is going to be steep. And do a trip, and as soon as you do your first trip, that learning curve is going to flatten and be a lot easier. Your second trip is going to be 100 times, 200 times, 500 times better. And you're going to know what you don't need. You're going to know what you do need. You're going to know what you forgot, what you want to bring next time. And it's going to be a much better experience the second time around. So that's what I always suggest to people. Go into it with an open mind, and don't go over the top crazy, and then you'll have a much better experience. And always start small too. Try doing a 5-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour, and then work your way up to that 39-hour. If you've never been offshore fishing before, don't go right into a 39-hour trip. It's not going to be a good experience for you. It's not going to be a good experience for people around you. So start small, work your way up. Get your feet wet for sure. Making sure you're managing your sleep is a good idea too. 39 or 44-hour trip especially, because think about a 39-hour trip. You leave the dock at 3 p.m. Let's talk about a Friday 39-hour trip. You leave the dock at 3 p.m. Friday. You start fishing around midnight Friday night, Saturday morning, or 1, 2 a.m. Saturday morning. And if you stay up the whole ride out, you're excited, you're drinking beer, having a good time, talking, preparing your rods, just totally amped up. Then all of a sudden you start fishing at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You have to fish the next 20 hours straight. If you didn't sleep at all on the ride out, you're not going to be prepared for success. The person who catches the most amount of fish has their bait wet the longest, is what Capt Brian always likes to say. It's a joke, but it's kind of true. The person who stands at the rail and has their bait on the bottom the longest is going to have the greatest chance of catching the most amount of fish. So you want to make sure you're maximizing your rail time, maximizing your time on the bottom by having the right tackle, the right tools, and making sure you're prepared, making sure you have enough sleep, making sure you're staying healthy, making sure you're drinking water, taking your freaking medication. I can't tell you how many trips are ruined because people don't bring the proper medication. If you're prescribed a heart medication or a diabetes medication, or you have insulin problems or whatever, bring your medication. That's a solid starting point. That's a great idea. So make sure you have your medication, make sure you're hydrated, make sure you're eating well, make sure you're sleeping well. Those are kind of the basics, but I have to mention them because of how often we run into people not doing it. Especially in the summertime, it gets hot and people get dehydrated, and I can't tell you how many cases of heat exhaustion have gone to heat stroke, to have gone to all of a sudden people are getting airlifted off the boat in a helicopter and almost dying because they're not taking care of themselves. So make sure you take care of yourself, and then make sure you have the right tackle and all that good stuff. All right, moving on. Hook size and setup for a sheep's head. So what we do around the docks is we're using spinning rods, the same spinning rod that you're going to take out there on a 5-hour or 10-hour trip for hogfish is going to be a good sheep's head setup. Generally, a super light egg sinker, like one of those really micro ones, or even a split shot is a good idea. and you're using like a size 1 or 1/0 hook with like 15 to 20 pound fluorocarbon, you don't need a really long leader, something fancy. Keep it basic. 10, 12, 20-inch piece of fluorocarbon is really all you need. And then keep that weight kind of close to the hook, because you want to use the minimal amount of weight, minimal amount of leader, and hide that hook really well. Is going to be your good option for those sheep's head. And you want to make sure you're keeping that bait as close to the structure as possible, whether it's a sheep's head or whether it's a bridge piling, a rock piling, a dock piling. The sheep's head are going to be on the structure, going up and down the piling, eating the barnacles, eating the crabs, eating the shrimp. So you want to make sure your bait is right on or right near that structure in that strike zone. A lot of times, as you let the bait go down and it goes out of sight, kind of at the base of those pilings is where the sheep's head are going to be hanging out and ready to pounce as well. So that's what we do around the docks with some pretty good success for sure. What main line would you use on a reel mainly for trolling, and what pound test? If you're going fishing with us, you can troll on a 5-hour half day, a 39-hour trip, or a 44-hour trip. On a 39 or 44-hour trip, generally you're going to be fishing 80-pound mono in your trolling reel. On a 5-hour half day trip, you're going to probably be trolling like 60-pound mono probably. You could troll 80-pound mono, but 60-pound mono is generally a good one. You could even go 40-pound on a 5-hour trip. But remember, we're going bottom fishing. These are bottom fishing trips, so you got to be able to retrieve that fish while the boat's moving. So you definitely have to be ready to reel and get after it in a big way. So gotta get after it and have the reel that's powerful enough to retrieve that fish while the boat's moving for sure. Do you have to give stars to get in the drawing for the trip? No. You definitely don't have to give stars. We appreciate if you do give stars, but you don't have to give stars to be qualified for a free trip. Those just help us to do more of these shows, and it's just a great way to help us fuel the show. Angel, speaking of stars, shout out to Angel Perez with a big 1,200 stars. Thank you, Angel. Steve and Brandy, appreciate your 500 stars, guys. Happy New Year. Don Shuett, appreciate your 400 stars. Tony Tomaston, I met him and he said you mispronounce my name all the time, so I apologize. I'm still doing it. Appreciate your 1,000 stars, Tony. Phil Batista, what's up, buddy? Jason Colleen, how are you, my friend? Appreciate all the stars, y'all. All right. Yes, the stars definitely help the shows. They help fuel the shows. They keep the lights on around here for sure. That's actually how we got this studio set up, is because of the live show stars, and especially the supporters group as well. Kind of helps us keep going on these shows. Makes it all possible. And Josh is putting the link to the supporters group in the chat if you're interested in thinking about it. It's only $4.99 a month. You get private access to our private group, some behind-the-scenes stuff. So it's a pretty good time. So we gave away our 5-hour half day. We gave away the swag pack. Let's go ahead and give away our 10-hour all-day trip before we answer the last few questions before we wrap up the show and give away our 39-hour trip. So let's see here. 10-hour all-day trip for 2 guests. Lucky winner is Gary Agnes from Wildwood, New Jersey. Congratulations, Gary, from the Great White North with your big win tonight. All right, let's see here. Next question. Let's see. If one wanted to troll on the way going out or on a 5-hour trip, what rod, tackle, line setup would you recommend? Thinking you travel around 20 knots. We do not travel 20 knots. On a half-day trip, 5-hour trip, we're traveling around 7 to 9 knots. On a 10-hour trip, we're traveling around 12 to 14 knots. So 11 to 13. So too fast to troll on a 10-hour trip generally. On a 5-hour trip, you can troll, but you want a bigger reel because remember, we're not going to slow down for you to retrieve that mackerel or that kingfish. You got to reel it in while the boat's moving. So a pretty good size reel, 2-speed, is a good idea. But we have them in the shop, and we can help you out and help you make sure you pick the right reel for sure. So I would stop by the shop and we can show you. Generally, it's the TLD 50 LWRSA 2-speed. The Shimano 50 is what we use. Let's see here. What other questions do we have? What shirt am I wearing? I'm wearing the Hogfish shirt. I would show you the back of it, but it's kind of difficult to do on the live show. But it's a Hogfish Bones shirt. We have a ton of really cool shirts on our online store. If you haven't stopped by to see our online store, you can just get to it right on our website page. If you go to hubbardsmarina.com and you hit shop and then hit Marina store, it's going to take you to, wrong tab. It's going to take you to our online store. And right on our online store, you can see, let's just go to the main page there, Josh. Right on our online store, you'll see our tackle, our rods, reels, our slow pitch gear. You can scroll down and you can check out the apparel, and you can check out the shirts. And there's a ton of really cool shirts that we have on our online store. Some of them don't have photos, but we're working right now to make sure all our shirts have photos. But this is the shirt that I have on tonight. You can kind of see the color. Looks a little different on the live show, but it's like brownish in color. It's a really cool shirt. I like the back of it a lot. We'll get a lot of compliments on the design on the back for sure. So that's the shirt. All right, next question. Are there Sinet in the Gulf? What? I don't think he's saying snook. I don't know. We do have snook in the Gulf. I don't know what you're saying, though. So I don't know what kind of fish you're talking about. Someone asked, will you be at Captain Palooza at Finn's Fishing Club February 6th? Yes, we're going to set up a booth for the Florida Guides Association at Captain Palooza. That'll be at Finn's Fishing Club February 6th, and it's going to be a good time. Capt. Mike Anderson and myself and a lot of our Florida Guides Association members, board members, will be in the Florida Guides Association booth talking about the Florida Guides Association and trying to solicit memberships. So we will see you at Captain Palooza for sure. Is it a bad idea to use a 3-way swivel on a 39-hour trip if you can pitch it away from everybody? Yes, in my opinion, it would be. I don't like the porgy rigs, the high-low rigs, the drop rigs. I personally strongly recommend using that fish finder rig, which is the slip egg sinker on the main line. So you put that little egg sinker, not with the swivel on either side of it, just an egg sinker. You put that on your main line. You put a normal swivel, barrel swivel, and then you put a 4 or 5 foot leader and then your hooks. That's what we call a fish finder rig. That's going to be your best bet. These fish, they see a lot of hooks. They get a lot of pressure. There's a lot of people out there fishing more than ever. So trying to have a more stealthy, good-looking setup is important. Think of yourself, right? If you go to a nice restaurant and you sit down and the waiter comes out with these dirty plates and your silverware's dirty and they just throw it on the table in front of you with a piece of meat and some sides scattered on the table or on the plate, it's not as appetizing. Whereas if you sit down at a fine dining restaurant and there's nice silverware, there's nice glasses, there's maybe a candle, and the meal comes out and it's all plated fancy, and there's little green shit on the plate that you're not even going to eat, but it just looks fancy. That presentation makes you more hungry. It makes it more appetizing. It makes it look better. The better it looks, the more appetizing it is. That presentation is important, and it's the same thing for the fish. If you have a very appetizing meal on the bottom that looks natural, that appears natural, the hook's hidden well, your leader is very natural, it's lighter tackle, it's looking good. Especially if you're on a boat with 10, 15, 20, 30 other people. If you have the most natural presentation that's holding bottom and staying still and looking good, and the leader's nice and stretched out, there's no kinks, there's no abrasion, there's no knots, it looks natural, you're going to get that bigger, more quality, smarter fish to bite a lot more often. So you're going to get the chance for that bigger keeper mangrove snapper, that bigger gag grouper, that bigger red grouper, that bigger triggerfish, whatever you're targeting. That higher quality fish, that bigger fish, that smarter fish that's been around the block once or twice is going to be the one who bites the best presentation. Just like in our world, right? The meanest, most aggressive person is generally going to come up and grab the big plate first, the big piece of the pie first. So it's the same thing right offshore when we're fishing for these fish. So you got to think like a fish, put yourself in their shoes, and I wouldn't go the three-way swivel route. I would keep it a lot more natural looking, if at all possible. If someone catches a limit of fish and catches another one, can they keep the bigger one and give the smaller one to someone else? No, that is not how it works. That is 100% against the law. Once your quota is filled, once your limit is filled, your limit is filled. You catch another fish. If it's 10 times, if it's a world record, you can't keep it. You either got to throw it back or you got to give it to someone else who has a opportunity to catch another fish. Once your limit is filled, your limit is filled. And what some people will do is, like, say for red snapper, you're allowed 2 per person per day or 4 on a 39-hour trip. So some people will catch 3 and then say, oh, I'm not going to keep a 4th. I'm going to wait until I get a big one. And then they end up not getting another big one. And then they end up coming back to the dock without filling their limit because they waited and they tried to play the game and try to catch the big one. So that's a dangerous thing. What I recommend doing is go out there, catch your fish as quick as possible. Once you've filled your limit, start fishing for something else. And if you catch a big one and you have to give it to someone else, good for you. That's a good problem to have. But if you go out there, you're allowed to catch 4 red snapper on a 39-hour and you catch 3 and you're like, I'm not going to keep this 4th one. I'm going to give it to this guy. I'm not going to keep this 5th one. It's not big enough. I'm going to give it to this guy. I'm not going to keep this 6th one. I'm going to give it to this person down the rail. You're going to end up coming home with just 3 red snapper instead of coming home with 4. So catch your 4, then switch tackle, switch leader setups, start targeting mangrove snapper, or switch to a bigger bait, start targeting a grouper, you know. So I strongly recommend catch your fish, focus on catching your limit, then switch to something else. But if you do fill up your quota, your limit, you're done. Send it like a barracuda. Pretty sure we don't have those in the Gulf, but a lot of times fishing is one of those things where you call it a Senate, it could be called this, and it's like, oh yes, we have those in the Gulf. Same thing with a cobia. I found out if you go to Texas, they call them ling, you know? And if I went to Texas and someone was like, oh, have you caught a ling? I'd be like, what's a ling? It's a cobia. So people have different names for different fish, so who knows? We could potentially have that too. All right, let's see. What other questions do we have? I think we got time for one more, if we got a good one here to answer before we wrap up. We do have a fishery meeting this week, heading out to Jacksonville to talk about our marine recreational education program the next couple days. Then got a race back to Tampa. Got an electronic reporting meeting. We're standing up a new electronic reporting data collection program for our federal for-hire fleet and the recreational fleet. We're trying to improve recreational fishing data again. And that's going to be a meeting in Tampa the second half of the week. So going to be bouncing around the state. So the supporters after show is going to be a little short for sure. Let's see. What other questions do we have? We're done with questions. We've got them all already. So red grouper's open. We talked a lot about that tonight. Hopefully everybody caught that red grouper is open. Triggerfish are closed the months of January and February. They'll reopen March 1st for the year, except for June and July. Triggerfish are closed for a spawning closure. Remember, gag grouper are going to open September 1st. They're going to be open for 3 weeks or 3 months. We're not quite sure. The January council meeting is coming up January 29th. I got my flight today, my hotel room today. That's January 29th is the Gulf Council meeting in New Orleans. Then April council meeting, I think that one's in Gulf Shores, Alabama. But those 2 meetings will know more about the gag grouper. Probably we'll have an idea at this one, but definitely by April we'll know when that gag grouper season is going to be for sure. But I know it's going to start September 1st, and I know it's going to be about 3 weeks or about 3 months. We'll know more as we get closer. Then also red grouper open January 1st, and they will be open for 4 months or 10 months. But from what I've heard, I'm feeling a little bit more confident that our red grouper fishery this year will look a lot like last year. It'll open January 1st, and it will probably be open through around mid-July, mid to late July, I think, is kind of the rumor I'm hearing. Amberjack opened September 1st for about 3 to 4 to 5 weeks maybe. And then I think those are all the species. Yeah, amberjack, red grouper, red snapper, gag grouper, and triggerfish. Those are the 5 major reef species that have seasons. So that's where we're at with those different seasons. What about rice whales? The feds actually denied that petition. Maybe I didn't do a good job announcing that, but the feds denied the petition for a slowdown zone for rice's whales in the Gulf. So at this time, we have no concerns about whales. We've defeated the whale discussion in the Gulf of Mexico, at least for now, at least for our fleet. So that's good news. All right. I think that's about all we have time for. We're going to hop over to our supporters after show. We're going to kick that off at 8:45, but we're going to keep it a little short tonight because I got to be up and out of my house around 3:30 a.m. to drive to Jacksonville. So we're going to keep that a little shorter tonight, but we're going to be back next week for another episode of our live stream show every Sunday night right here for the live stream show. Hopefully we'll see you next week and every Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. for that live stream show. Hopefully you've enjoyed our daily updates. We're really working hard trying to grow our Twitter, or our TikTok page. If you haven't followed us on TikTok, make sure you do so. We do have a Twitter, but we don't spend a lot of time on Twitter, to be honest with you. I think that's everything we have. Don't forget Seafood Fest is coming up January 19th, 20th, and 21st. Seafood Fest is going to be a good time. It's a John's Pass wide event. Really, really cool. Definitely a good time. You don't want to miss out on that. We have Final Friday, end of January, January 26th is Final Friday, 2 days after my birthday. And we're going to have a good time doing our crawfish boil. We're going to have a barbecue contest. It's going to be a great time. So hopefully we'll see you Final Friday in January on the 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. And I think that's all the announcements I had. Big shout out to you guys for watching. Appreciate you guys for being a part of our show. Hopefully we'll see you soon inside John's Pass at Hubbard's Marina. Don't forget, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too darn busy. Let's see who won our 39-hour trip for one lucky winner. 39-hour trip for one goes to, drum roll please, Joey. Joey from Orlando. We're going to go Joey from Orlando. Congratulations. You got 5 minutes or less to claim your free trip. You got to text us at that phone number on the screen. Hopefully, we'll see you guys next week for another episode. Don't forget to tell your friends about the show. Every week, we need you to bring one more person to the show next week. So tell a friend this week about the live show. Tell them about Hubbard's Marina. Tell them to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, Trovo, Twitter, all that good stuff. Hopefully, we'll see you out on the water, and have a good night, y'all. Thanks for watching.